Hello, everybody. Welcome to November. Welcome to the Podcast Daily for Tuesday, as Ohio State gets fired up for Northwestern week with some media availability with Ryan Day, I believe Jim Knowles, and potentially Brian Hartline in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. I think that's how it's going to shake out. We'll see. As always, Bill Landis joining me as we get ready with some key questions for a Tuesday with the Buckeyes and getting ready for not the sexiest matchup of the season, but I know that Bill has a lot of questions that he has on his mind that he wants answers for. I touched on mine on Monday, as I always do. 5 questions on ohiostate.rivals.com, but now it's Bill's turn.
What are they going to do at running back? Because I guess that's like 1A, what's up with Mayan Williams? But then 1B, I think Mayan and Travion Henderson have been banged up like all year. And this is a 3-game stretch where I think you could steal both of them sometime. Let's assume Mayan maybe can play this week. We'll figure that out, I guess, soon enough. But if they're both available, how much do you actually use them when you have Dallin Hayden and now Trip Trainum available? And might there even be some value in getting those last 2 guys reps to continue to bolster the depth there? So I think that running back's in a really interesting position right now. I don't know what to make of the Mayan injury. I thought like seeing him on the sideline in a cast, obviously in the second half is not promising, but that wasn't like the immediate reaction. They put him out there and like his hand was buddy taped, and it looked like for a second they might try to put him back into the game. So I don't know. I don't know what that is, and I don't know that Ryan Day will say definitively what it is, but I'm hoping we can get maybe at least a little bit of a feel for timeline and then what they do relative to that timeline with the other guys over these next 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's going to be one of the more fascinating subplots there with the health of Ohio State's roster, which we've talked about on Tuesdays for practically every week of the season. You know, I think with the knee, the fact that it was wrapped for Mayan Williams on Saturday, I think that's probably expected that he's just going to have to do that after every game for the rest of the year. I don't think that it can get better or get worse, at least in the current state of that injury. He's just going to have to deal with that. I was more intrigued. I mean, we've seen running backs in the past put, some sort of cast on and still run the football, maybe just keep it in one arm. There's risk that comes with that. I don't know, what the likelihood of playing through that really is for Mayan Williams, or if they have to do anything surgically for that. I don't know the answer to that at this point. As you said, those are questions that we hope to get answers for throughout the week, even if they don't come publicly from Ryan Day on Tuesday at noon.
Yeah, it'll be, but there's like the added layer on top of that. Even if he's fine, do you still want to rest him? Like I could follow that logic as well, just because both those guys have been so kind of in and out and hampered throughout the season that you might want to make sure their workload is lighter so that they're ready for whatever day the Michigan game is. November 26th, is that when it is? So that's when you need those guys to be at their absolute best. And they're playing 3 teams the next 3 weeks where, not to be mean about it, I think if you or I played running back, Ohio State might be okay against these 3 teams. So I'm
going to ask Tony
to see how they handle that.
I'm going to ask Tony if I can actually against Northwestern.
We get a touch.
I want to get involved. No, I mean, the question is fair, and it's a good one. I think that this stretch is hard to break down for Ohio State, this upcoming stretch, because I don't think you can just say, you know what, everybody goes in bubble wrap, don't need the starters. Like, the backups can win the next 3 games for sure. But then what? You just roll out of bed on November 26th and you're ready to go for the biggest game of the year? It doesn't work that way. And so there's going to have to be some planning and a lot of, maybe harder decisions than actually harder to win the game on Saturday, if that makes sense. Like, you want to be cautious. You don't want to put, Mayan Williams unnecessarily out there for just in case, somebody, a referee holding up a yardstick doesn't drop it on the ground and nearly breaks his elbow. That whole situation on Saturday could have been worse than it actually was, which is crazy to think about because he got twisted up 2 different directions at the same time. Putting that all aside, there are other positions where you have to think about that, and you have to think about if you want to work depth. I didn't mention this on Monday, but I do think about, a situation like Matt Jones,
Mm-hmm.
He struggled. Do you want to take a chance and maybe see if Enoch Vamahi gives a boost earlier in a game or starting a game, or Josh Fryer for an extended period, playing time, and get an evaluation of that? Matt Jones is also one who is like, he's not fully healthy. That's part of the struggles. So you can do two things at once against Northwestern, which is, again, a very bad football team. You can be a little bit more cautious with these injuries while also trying to develop depth, because after these 3 games, they could still have to play 4 more.
They could, and you make a good point too about, like, I don't know. Sometimes I feel bad being dismissive about Big Ten opponents, but, like, let's face it, they're going to win all these games comfortably. But you can't, I guess, as a team, just sort of not approach them seriously or think that you can just rest whoever you want and then just hope it all comes back when you play a team like Michigan. It's like, that's not how it works. You're asking for trouble if you do that. So I think, like, ideally, it's try to put all 3 of these games away by halftime and then see what you can do from there. But I'm like, I think there's a couple different places you could entertain that idea. Offensive line is definitely one of them, more specifically right guard, because you're right, Mike, like, Matt Jones has struggled. I wonder how much of that is his foot and how much of that is he's never played this much before. Like, I think there's probably some of that at work too. He's never been a full-time starter before this season, so I think the wear and tear comes in for everybody. And, like, it's not an off week, but I think if Ohio State handles its business, it can treat the second half of these games, or should be able to treat the second half of these games, as opportunities to get guys a little bit of added rest and have them fresh for Michigan while still getting in the work they need to make sure that they're sharp.
Okay. That is question 1A through D. Injuries and how to manage the next 3 weeks. Where will you go from there?
So we've not talked with Brian Hartline all year, right? I'm not forgetting the time that we have, right?
Not since camp. So,
no. They're pretty thin at that spot with Jackson out for however long that takes. And we've not seen much of the young guys. So I would like to know what Brian thinks of where these freshmen are. I want to say that only Keon Grays, I think, even has a target of all the 4 freshmen. He traveled to Penn State. Kojo Antwi traveled to Penn State. Caleb Burton did not, right? And
he was listed as Caleb Burton was listed as unavailable, and I believe Caleb Brown was there on the travel roster. Is that
I think that's right. Yeah. So, and I think that was the case for the first Word game too. So, and I think that means something. I think being on that list means something, but we've just not seen a lot of them. And I was a little bit on alert for. I guess I wasn't entirely sure how it would happen, but, like, would one of these guys be able to emerge by the end of the season in a way similar to Chris Olave did in 2018? And nothing to this point has happened to suggest that will be the case. I suppose there's still time, especially given what we just talked about with the caliber of opponent the next 3 weeks. But just more generally, like, what he thinks of the growth of those 4, and if maybe potentially one of them could help them down the stretch, because I think they could use an extra body there if they're not going to have Jackson.
It didn't happen for Chris Olave really until, like, the next to last week of the regular season. I think he caught 3 balls at Michigan State that freshman year, and then had the big, huge coming out party in the rivalry the next week. But we sort of knew that it was coming. We had heard so many conversations about it that it wasn't a real surprise. I think maybe we had just given up hope that it was actually going to happen for all the time, at least for me. I think remembering back, it's like, Chris Olave, he's still around. He's been generating a lot of buzz. Look out for this guy. And then forgot about it. And then by the time that we'd stopped talking about it, boom, he was ready to do it. I asked Ryan Day about those guys on Thursday, and it wasn't the most encouraging answer to think that it was coming for any of those guys. The one name that was mentioned was Kojo Antwi, and I guess that matches up with who I thought was the closest to the field for Ohio State. So it didn't surprise me that was the only name that was mentioned out of that group. But again, I don't think that it's particularly close for him at this point. And that's another spot, though, where you're looking at it, Bill, and you're looking at the next 3 weeks. And it's like, what's the downside to trying it? And especially if you do handle business early and get up at halftime, like, let those guys play a little bit. And this isn't a Kyle McCord conversation. This is about, like, if another injury were to happen to those top 3 wide receivers, that gets pretty dicey for the Buckeyes in a hurry. So that's another spot where I think some experimentation would be well served. But we'll see what Brian Hartline feels about that. I have a good idea what he's going to say, but it'll be fun to at least hear him say it out loud.
Yeah, he's got a lot of practice of answering questions about really talented freshmen who aren't playing at the moment. So I think he's got that one down. I'd like to see those guys get on the field, especially too because now, if you would have said like I don't know 4 weeks ago, if you would have asked me like what I thought of that proposition, I would have said like I don't know, like I think I get it, but I would rather see CJ and Marvin and Emeka and Julian continue to build up like a strong rapport, but like that seems pretty strong at the moment. So it's actually kind of remarkably strong. So I don't think that's an issue too. I don't know. Again, I think if they can get up by 7 touchdowns at halftime, which doesn't seem out of the question, that's a big opportunity for guys like that to get on the field. So we'll see what Brian Hartline says.
Just that tells you about Northwestern week. Bill's just casually throwing out there a 49-0 lead at halftime.
I mean, is it out of the realm of possibility?
It's not. I've seen it. I mean, I've seen it against better teams than Northwestern.
The line is weird. I'll say that. I will say that. The line doesn't make much sense to me.
Yeah. I have a question for the odds makers. How did you come up with that?
Unless the idea is like, no, I don't think so. But if it's like we think Ohio State's going to be winning 42-0 at halftime and then pull all of its starters, and then Northwestern's going to score 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter and it's going to be 42-14, I guess I can see that. But I don't understand why. What was it? It was like 33.
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
No,
yeah.
I asked you in the car on Sunday. I said, "Is it out yet?" And you said, "Yeah." The first one I see is 31.5 and a total of 59. And I was like, they think this game is going to be 45-14? Like, based on what? I don't like. Northwestern just gave up 1 billion yards to Iowa. Yeah. Normally their whole thing is, well, nobody's going to run up the score on Northwestern because Pat Fitzgerald will put together a great plan and they'll be fundamentally sound. You can't do that against Iowa. And they can't score. Their offense is absolutely horrific. Nobody thought either team was going to score in that matchup last week, and Northwestern gave up far too many points against Iowa.
Yeah. So this is from the Action Network. I don't know if they make their own lines or pull them from someplace else, or if it's a composite. But it was when I looked in the car on Sunday, it was 31. I think it opened at 30.5, and now it's at 38.5 with a total of 62.5. So I think that's going to keep going up.
Man, boy, anybody who had lines available before they crossed over from Pennsylvania back into Ohio that didn't get their money in if they went to Happy Valley. What a mistake. What a missed opportunity. They were just handing out free money on Saturday.
They were. Well, listen, I cashed my Eagles parlay, so we're all good.
Hey, shout out to Patrick Rogers for performing well at the Barracuda, whatever it is, Bermuda Championship yesterday. We made it rain on Sunday. We love you, P. Raj. That's a couple questions. What else is on your mind, Bill?
So like the run game, right? The run game is on the front of everyone's mind, and not personnel like we talked about, but like what's happening and why can't they run the ball? But like I tried to ask about that last week. I've asked about this a lot, frankly, over the last couple of years, and like I think sometimes, and like I don't get upset at all when people ask us like, hey, can you ask about this? Like, that's what we're here to do. But I think sometimes there's a thought like, hey, can you ask Ryan Day about why they can't run the ball so that he starts running the good plays? It's like Ryan Day is not going to change his plan based off questions we ask. So sometimes it feels like a little foolhardy to even get into it. But like they did the thing again against Penn State where they got in the pistol and under center and only ran the ball. And I don't mean like ran the ball most of the time. I mean only ran the ball. It was 12 times they got into those formations and 12 times they ran the ball. And like you can't do that. Well, at least in theory, you shouldn't be able to do that. They still scored 40 points, so maybe you can do that. And I'm an idiot, but I just the plan running the ball just doesn't make any sense to me. But I'm trying to think of a way to ask it so that we actually get perhaps an enlightening answer about it, because there's a way to ask it that puts Ryan Day on his heels for sure. But then I don't think you'll get a good answer out of that. But maybe people will find satisfaction in Ryan Day just being told like, "Hey, man, you guys stink at running the ball," without getting a response to it. But I would like to like try to glean information from that, just like why is it okay to just run the ball exclusively out of specific formations and tip your hand that egregiously to a defense? But I've asked that too. I asked them at Big Ten Media Days because they did it last year, and he was just like, I don't think we did that. I was like, well, he did. So like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, it's a delicate dance because you can't just go in there and treat it as an interrogation. And I know that there are many people that wish that it was that way, but we're trying to get in a half hour's worth of information out of it. So Brian Day, your running game currently stinks is probably not a good way to get there and to that point and to keep it going. I do think that the last 2 weeks are cause for concern. And as you mentioned, you've been asking about this for longer than 2 weeks and longer than 2 months. And it's sort of been, especially last year, it was a thing that you identified pretty early on that could be a problem. And lo and behold, it was when it mattered most. It doesn't seem to me like you think that this is unsalvageable. And I know that you've been encouraged by a lot of things that have already happened throughout the season. It's strange the way that I think that's the only way that I can rationalize it, that it's happened the last 2 weeks coming out of the off date, because it seemed to me before that like they were really trending in the right direction. And Mayan was doing it 1 week and Travion was doing it the next, and they're going to come back fresher. The injuries were going to be behind those guys, and the offensive line was going to keep firing and clicking. And it was a regression. I wrote that on Saturday. I wrote it again on Sunday. There's no other way to put it for the last 2 weeks, but it's not too late to turn it out of that tailspin. But we also won't know if it's fixed until November 26th. So
yeah,
I don't know.
That's the thing that makes it difficult. Is that I think I might have said after, I think I might have, I don't know if I said it in the version of Snap Judgments people saw, but I said it in the one that we recorded that people didn't listen to. They can line up in the pistol on the hash and run the stretch play into the boundary 50 times a game the next 3 weeks, and they're going to win by 40. Yep. And that won't tell us that their run game is fixed. So it is going to be difficult, I think, to analyze moving forward. Because I guess the other part of that is too, there is strategy to this. Even if you think to yourself like we got to change some stuff, how much of that do you want to do before you actually get on the field against Michigan? I don't know the answer to that. There is some gamesmanship involved with that. I understand. But the thing that's just so weird to me is it's just my opinion. I'm not going to pretend to know more football about Ryan Day. That's not what I believe. I hope that doesn't come off that way. But I think we have seen things throughout this year that feel like the things that can solve some of the issues they've had, whether that's better protecting other plays out of formations with play action or dressing things up slightly differently, running some different kind of run schemes. Like we've seen it, and we've seen it look good. And as part of that is Justin Fry. Part of that, I think, is Kevin Wilson and his running background, complementing with Ryan Day's passing game. Like there have been multiple games this year where that's all looked really good. But for whatever reason, the last 2 weeks, it just hasn't. And I don't know why. It's an odd time of the season to start kind of regressing to just solely relying on your tendencies. But maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe you do that to set up something down the road. I don't know. I know there's some theories like that out there. But for me, the idea of like constantly running plays over and over again that aren't working so that you can sneak up on Michigan just seems like a really inefficient way to run your season. So I like to know a little more about the thought process there, I guess.
Especially if doing so means that you stick your hand into the fire in Beaver Stadium and nearly get burned. I mean,
right.
That part was weird. But then when the game was on the line in the fourth quarter, you saw two different run plays, and both of them worked for touchdowns, really. I mean,
sure did.
It doesn't seem like it's that complicated. Again, not a football coach, never have been, definitely not one of the highest paid offensive minds in the sport. So I defer to his judgment. And I know that Kevin Wilson knows a lot of football, and Justin Fry and Brian Hartline and Tony Halford. Like they're aware of what's happening. I don't believe that there's some sort of like inability of all of those people at the same time to just throw away their football knowledge and just be like, this is the only run play we know. It's just, let's hope it works this time. I don't think that's like happening, but it's frustrating to watch when you know that they're capable of doing something so much better. And I don't know. You and I talked about it for about 6 hours in the car over the weekend and like tried to come up with a solution. And we don't need to make the daily today 6 hours, but it's like, why? You don't have to score every time. Let's start with that premise. But they're capable of doing it, and they're slow to adjust the game plan sometimes, and it's hard to figure out why, because those guys know so much football and because they have the personnel and the quarterback and the athletes to do anything under the sun. Like, I'm not asking for them to win by 100. It's just like, why did we watch those other 3 quarters if you only want, like, you saved all the good plays for the fourth? What a waste of time.
Yeah. It's not like I want to make it abundantly clear that we are not asking Ohio State to be perfect, and I don't think any fan should either. But there's a lot of room between perfect and I don't know, terrible, and they're not terrible either. But they're operating someplace in the middle with the run game right now, and we've seen it look much better than this. Maybe we will on Tuesday say, hey, Ryan Day, you guys know you ran all 12 times you lined up in the pistol under center against Penn State. Like, oh man, really? Well, we shouldn't do that, and then maybe it won't happen anymore. But I'm skeptical.
Yeah, that'd be super helpful. Oh, we didn't watch the film. We didn't have Keenan Bailey script any of that or write down any of the results. Wow. We needed a Bill Landis rewatch. Now we've got it. And here you go. You're now a quality control coach for $300,000 a year, Bill. Thank you.
Nice. I would do that. If I had a job, if someone wants to pay me, I guess I kind of already get paid to sit down and watch football. But if someone wanted to pay me more to do, I guess I already get paid to sit down and watch football. But I have to write. If someone paid me to do that, but then not have to write, just like collect information and then have opinions on it, but never have to write it down or talk about it anywhere, that sounds great.
That's a better deal.
Yeah, it's just easier. It's easier. Yeah,
I think what they really want, Bill, is that they just want in-house coverage. Like, we get to watch their game, and then they, instead of sending this out to the rest of the world, we'll just go sit in the couches in Day's office and be like, what did we see? What questions do we have for you, Ryan? Here's what we noticed.
Yeah. It's like we write an internal newsletter that gets circulated in the Woody. Yeah.
Yeah.
I could do that. I just I don't want to make this more of a deal than it needs to be. Like, in my mind, it's a pretty big deal that they're having so much trouble running the ball. Maybe in other people's minds, it's like, who cares? They have the best quarterback in the country, and these receivers are just going to throw it on everybody. That could very much be true. They could rush for 60 yards a game the rest of the way and maybe still win a national championship. My personal opinion is that you're going to need to run the ball efficiently at some point to win it all. And they're not good enough doing that right now, but they have been good enough showing that in the past. But my main thing with it is they're so inefficient doing it right now that it's eliminating the margin for error for the passing game, and I think in a significant way. Like, their average yard to gain on third down against Penn State was almost 9 yards. And if you're constantly putting your passing game in a position where they have to convert 3rd and 9 against really good defenses in the playoff or in the national championship or against Michigan or in the Big Ten championship, maybe they can do it. Like, they're capable, but it's just a lot to ask of them over and over again. And I think they can help themselves if they can find a way to run it a little more efficiently.
Yeah, I think that this team is more talented and more complete than 2019 LSU, but also I think they really leaned hard into the fact that you have Joe Burrow and 3 NFL wide receivers. Like, you can throw to set up the run and succeed that way. Like, so I'm not in the who cares, they can throw the ball camp, but I'm close to it. I do think, and I said that on Saturday in maybe both versions of Snap Judgments, but more extensively in the one that was scrapped, that, like, lean into your actual identity. They're trying so hard to be, this tough team that runs and can build its whole offense around a great running attack. Like, that doesn't fit their best personnel. It negates their most talented player, which is CJ Stroud, and their next most talented player, which is now fast becoming Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, that's where you're going to beat people, in my opinion. I do agree completely with what you're saying. In tough situations, they do have to be able to rely on it. But I don't think that this has to be an offense that's like the Urban Meyer, we want 250, 250. Like, I don't think that you should want that with this team, because you can easily go 400, 100, and no one will be able to stop them from scoring 50 points. Like, that's sort of where I'm at. But
yeah,
2.2 yards per carry is not good enough either.
Right. And like the running game can certainly be complementary to their passing game. Like, in fact, it should be. I'm not like, I never came into this year thinking like they got to switch their identity and be a team that is ground and pound all the way. And the funny thing about that too is I mostly think about their run game situationally, as you alluded to, like third down red zone. Can you run the ball third down red zone when you have to? And funnily enough, like in the Penn State game where they couldn't run the ball really at all, the 2 times they ran the ball in the red zone, they scored. So like, I don't know, like, is that good enough? Maybe. I probably not, but it was kind of funny to me that they ran the ball. They only had 7 red zone plays. It was weird. They were 4 of 5 in the red zone, but only had 7 total plays ran in the red zone. But the 2 times they ran it, they scored.
Yeah, I think Ohio State would probably take that. You win a lot of games that way. Do you have anything for Jim Knowles or no?
Interested in like Jordan Hancock's growing role. He played 15 snaps against Iowa. He played 31 against Penn State. I think
that surprised me. It did not feel like 31.
It didn't. Well, he didn't stick out as much because he wasn't making mistakes from what I could tell. And he wasn't, I think he only saw like 3 targets. So it wasn't like it was a major day of work for him, but I was surprised by the number 2. And it feels like Denzel Burke is past whatever was holding him back earlier in the season, has played well mostly for the last few weeks. J.K. Johnson, I think, maybe could be better served by not having such a large workload on his shoulders, which means Jordan Hancock can play more, and also Cameron Brown coming back from what's held him out too, I think can help that.
Yep. More corners talk. That's been hasn't been a lot else to even worry about with that Ohio State defense right now, playing at a pretty high level. And really the coverage, other than the J.K. Johnson pass interference, I thought was fine. They had a couple breakdowns. You alluded to those in your written rewatch, where Jim Knowles seemed to get more creative moving forward. But like, the long touchdown, missed tackles seem to be a bigger issue for Ohio State in the secondary than coverage breakdowns. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but that was my impression of what happened on Saturday. So
yeah,
I don't know that that's going to continue to happen. Maybe they need to try some of this stuff again in the coming weeks. Like, we keep saying Cameron Martinez, like, find out for real. Like, just let him do it. You're going to get into these games. Doesn't even have to be the second half. Like, they've been so willing to let this rotation go on the defensive line, and that they don't seem to be overly concerned about it as much as I have been. But they've not tried that a lot with the guys at safety. And Tanner McAllister and the nickel stuff, he's been very solid, but the tackling has not been perfect. Again, perfection is not a reasonable standard, but you're going to have to build depth, both to get through as many games as they want to play moving forward, the quality of competition for the next 3 weeks, and for the future of the program. So, like, I don't know. I think I want to see some of that stuff. So the guys that we've talked about that get a lot of buzz, whether that's Vamahi on the offensive line or Cameron Martinez and nickel, like, now's the time for that, really. You got an opportunity in front of you. You should take advantage of it if you're Ohio State.
Yeah, Cameron Martinez only played 1 snap against Penn State, and I thought going into the game there was an opportunity for him to play more. I thought during the game there was an opportunity for them to go to him, and it never came to fruition. They're not going to play. Well, I guess maybe Maryland they'll play some good receivers, but the next 2 weeks they're certainly not going to be threatened via the pass. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm curious about that spot too, and then also maybe for Jim Knowles as well. He's talked about his philosophy on big plays before. It's like 5 or fewer. He feels pretty good about that. They gave up more than that in this game, but then they also had JT Tuimoloau play like the best game a defensive lineman's ever played and steal some of that back. So I wonder if his calculus changes at all. So like if Ohio State's defense gives up 8 big plays, but also has 4 takeaways and scores a touchdown, like, do those things cancel each other out, and does he end up feeling pretty good about the day? Because I thought it was a pretty solid day for the defense. There was like 2 long Penn State scoring drives when the game was still in doubt. One of those was because a broken tackle turned a 6-yard pass into a 54-yard pass. But otherwise, like, I thought they were pretty good about getting off the field. They were really good on third down, and they had those takeaways and splash plays. So I didn't come out of that like alarmed about the defense. I figured Penn State statistically would put up bigger numbers than we've seen because they're much better than any offense Ohio State's played so far. But I thought for the most part, they did a pretty good job of answering that test.
All right, we're going to get a lot of answers from the Ohio State coaching staff on Tuesday starting at noon in the team room at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Excited as always for another week to go cover Ohio State and Northwestern. Going to be a great road trip to Evanston, Chicago, wherever. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Where do we spend the most of our time? It probably won't be in Evanston. Just a couple hour cameo. Then we'll get back out of there. But before we can do all that, we'll be at the Woody on Tuesday. Berm will be joining us as always. We'll have some snap judgments when it's after. We'll also live stream all the coaches' availability on the podcast on the YouTube channel. Enjoy that, and then we'll talk to you afterwards. For Bill, I'm Austin. So long.